You're sitting in the back row, Mom. The front 3 rows are for important guests. My daughter said it while adjusting the pearl earrings I gave her for her 30th birthday. We were standing in the marble lobby of the Whitestone Country Club outside Greenwich, Connecticut, less than 90 minutes before my only granddaughter was set to walk down the aisle. Around us, white hydrangeas spilled from tall crystal vases the florist had placed on every surface. The string quartet was warming up somewhere down the corridor. The whole place smelled like fresh peonies and expensive cologne. For a second, I thought I had misunderstood her. The acoustics in that lobby were strange, the kind that made voices echo and overlap. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" My daughter Bernadette didn't even turn her face toward me. She was watching herself in the gold-framed mirror behind the reception desk, smoothing a wrinkle out of her champagne-colored mother-of-the-bride dress. The same dress I had picked up the tab for at Bergdorf's 3 weeks earlier when she'd called me crying because the boutique wouldn't hold it any longer. "The back row, Mom. Aisle seat if you want. It's just easier with the photographer's setup. He needs clean sightlines for the front." Easier. There was that word again, the word people use when they want to dress up something ugly. I should mention that the photographer she was talking about, the one flown in from Los Angeles for $14,000, was paid for by me. The hydrangeas were paid for by me. The string quartet, the catering, the open bar, the rehearsal dinner at the steakhouse the night before, all of it paid for by me. $83,000 and change. Give or take a few last-minute add-ons Bernadette kept calling me about while I was trying to do my morning crossword. Hello, friends. Naomi here. When I sat down to tell you this story, my hands actually started shaking again, and it's been almost a year now. I want you to listen carefully, because what happened at that wedding taught me something I think a lot of you have already learned the hard way. Some insults don't come with raised voices. The cruelest ones come wrapped in pearl earrings and polite logistics. I'm 68 years old. I taught middle school English in the Hartford Public Schools for 31 years before I retired. My late husband, Walter, was a structural engineer who passed 5 years ago this March. I'm not a wealthy woman by the standards of the people my daughter runs with, but Walter and I were careful. We paid off our house in West Hartford in 1998. We invested steadily. When he died, his life insurance and the pension paid out cleanly, and I found myself, for the first time in my life, with what people politely call comfortable means. Bernadette discovered my new comfort about 6 weeks after the funeral, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Back in that lobby, I just stood there holding my little beaded clutch, the one Walter gave me for our 40th anniversary. I could feel my heart beating in a slow, heavy way, like it was trying to remind me it was still there. "Bernie," I said, and I used her childhood name on purpose. "The back row is 20 rows back. I won't be able to see Hadley's face when she takes her vows." She finally looked at me, not angry, worse than angry, mildly inconvenienced. "Mom, please, not today. There's a screen set up in the back, specifically so people in the rear can see. You'll be fine." A screen. My only granddaughter, the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest watching reruns of Murder, She Wrote, was getting married, and I was supposed to watch her on a television screen from the back of a hotel ballroom that I was paying for. Behind Bernadette, my son-in-law Trevor came strolling across the lobby with 2 glasses of champagne. He's a partner at some hedge fund I never bothered to learn the name of. Tall, silver at the temples, the kind of man who shakes your hand and immediately looks past you to see who's more important in the room. He handed Bernadette one of the glasses and gave me a smile that was all teeth and no eyes. "Naomi, you look lovely." I was wearing the navy blue silk dress I had bought for Walter's retirement party in 2013. I knew exactly how I looked, and lovely wasn't the word for it, but I thanked him. "Trevor, can you explain to me why Hadley wants me in the back row?" He had the decency to glance at Bernadette before he answered. Just a flick of the eyes. But I caught it. "Oh, you know how these things are. Photographer's preference." Bernie and I are at the front, of course, parents' table at the reception, but the seating chart had to make some tough calls. Tough calls. The man was a vice president of a hedge fund. He'd negotiated mergers worth 9 figures. But the seating chart had made some tough calls. I excused myself to the ladies' room. I needed to think. The white stone has a powder room with a long velvet bench and good lighting. I sat down on that bench with my clutch in my lap, and I took several deep breaths, the way my therapist had taught me to do after Walter died. Here's what I knew. My granddaughter Hadley is 26 years old. She's a kindergarten teacher in Stamford. She'd been engaged to a young man named Reed for 14 months. Reed is a public defender. Sweet, soft-spoken, his parents are retired school teachers from Vermont. The Vermont in-laws were footing exactly nothing for this wedding, and from what Hadley had told me on the phone, they were genuinely hurt that it had grown into such a spectacle. They had offered to host a small ceremony at their farm, and Bernadette had laughed. Hadley had not wanted a country club wedding. Hadley had wanted Vermont, but Bernadette had wanted 400 guests, and Bernadette had wanted the New York Times style section to call. And Bernadette had calmly explained to me over a long lunch at the Hartford Club that this wedding was going to be very expensive, and that it would mean so much to Hadley if her grandmother could help. It would mean so much to Hadley if her grandmother could help. It would mean so much to Hadley. I sat on that velvet bench, and I thought about how many times in the last 5 years I had heard some version of that sentence. It would mean so much to Trevor if you co-signed this loan. It would mean so much to me if you covered the property taxes on the lake house this year. It would mean so much to Hadley if you helped with her down payment on the condo. Hadley had moved into that condo 8 months ago. I'd put up $65,000. When I'd visited her at Thanksgiving and casually mentioned the housewarming gift I'd brought, she'd looked at me with the most genuinely confused expression. "Grandma, what do you mean you helped? Mom said you gave us a small gift for the moving truck." A small gift for the moving truck. I closed my eyes there in the powder room, and I let that memory sit in my chest. The way Hadley's face had gone still when I told her the truth. The way she'd said quietly, "Grandma, I had no idea." She'd been raised by Bernadette her whole life. She was used to her mother editing reality. I opened my purse, and I took out my phone. Now, a lot of people my age pretend they can't work a smartphone. I never had that luxury. I spent the last 6 years of my career teaching 7th graders how to write essays on Chromebooks. I know my way around a phone just fine. I opened my banking app first. I scrolled through the recent transactions, the deposit to the country club, the catering invoice, the florist, the photographer, every single one of them traceable to my Visa. Every single one of them was in the cancellation window that I, the cardholder, had personally read in the contracts before I signed them. I'm the daughter of a Hartford accountant. I read contracts. Then I opened my contacts, and I scrolled to a name I hadn't called in 2 years. Maureen Delacroix had been my best friend since the first day of student teaching at Bulkley High School in 1979. She was a retired family law attorney in Greenwich. Her granddaughter went to school with Hadley. She was, in fact, on the guest list for the wedding I was currently sitting in the bathroom of. She picked up on the second ring. "Naomi, are you here?" I just pulled into the lot. "Maureen, I need a favor, and I need it now." She must have heard something in my voice because she didn't ask a single question. She just said, "Tell me where you are." 5 minutes later, Maureen walked into the powder room in a lilac suit with a corsage already pinned to her lapel. She sat down on the velvet bench next to me and she listened. I told her about the back row. I told her about the screen. I told her about the $83,000. I told her about Hadley's condo and Bernadette's lie about the moving truck. When I was finished, Maureen exhaled through her nose. She has done that since 1979, whenever she's about to dismantle something. "Naomi, you have power right now that you will not have in 1 hour. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" I understood. She walked me through it, step by step, the cancellation language, who to call first, what to say, how to phrase things so that nobody could later claim I had acted irrationally or under duress. "You are the card holder," she said. "You are the principal. Nobody on the vendor side answers to your daughter. They answer to the credit card on file." I asked her if I should talk to Hadley first. Maureen thought about this for a long moment. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Naomi, if Hadley really wants Vermont, she'll still have Vermont after today. If Hadley wants this spectacle, she'll have to choose it for herself. and pay for it herself, and not hide behind her mother. Either way, the truth helps her. The lie has been helping no one but Bernadette. I sat there for another minute. Then I stood up, smoothed down my navy dress, and walked out of that powder room with Maureen right behind me. The lobby had started filling up. Guests in pastel suits and bright dresses, the men checking their phones, the women air-kissing each other and pretending to remember names. I spotted Bernadette across the room, laughing with one of her tennis friends from the club. Trevor was nowhere to be seen. I didn't approach her. I walked past her, out the side door, and onto the wide stone terrace overlooking the golf course. The morning was clear and bright. You could see all the way down the 18th fairway. I sat down at one of the wrought iron tables, opened my contacts, and made my first call. The florist answered on the third ring. Her name was Linnea. I'd worked with her on every event the family had hosted for years. Linnea, it's Naomi Pritchard. I need to cancel the floral order for the white stone today. There was a long pause. Mrs. Pritchard, the flowers are already installed. I understand. I'm canceling the balance of the contract. The reception centerpieces, the chuppa arrangements, the cocktail hour displays. Anything that hasn't been physically placed yet, I want it stopped. Any deposit refundable per the contract, please refund to the card on file. She didn't argue. I could hear her clicking through her system. Mrs. Pritchard, I have to ask, is everything all right? Linnea, everything is finally all right. Send me the confirmation by text. I hung up. I called the country club's event coordinator next, a young woman named Marisol who I'd met 3 times during the planning meetings. I asked her to put me through to her manager. When the manager came on, I introduced myself as the cardholder for the entire event, and I told him I was rescinding authorization for any further charges to my card, effective immediately. I asked him what the cancellation status would be if I terminated the reception package right now, with the ceremony not yet begun. He went very quiet. He told me the ceremony space and the cocktail hour were locked in, but the dinner service, the open bar, and the cake could still be canceled with a partial refund. Cancel them, I said. Mrs. Pritchard, I want to be sure I understand. There are 400 guests arriving in approximately 90 minutes. I understand the guest count. I personally signed the check for the guest count, canceled the dinner, the bar, and the cake. Any food and beverage costs already incurred for prep, fine, I'll absorb. Anything that hasn't been served, stop now. I made 4 more calls. The photographer, the string quartet for the reception, the DJ, the transportation company that was bringing the bridal party from the suite to the ceremony. In each conversation, I was polite. I was clear. I never raised my voice. I confirmed my identity. I requested written confirmation by email or text. I thanked them for their professionalism. When I hung up the last call, I sat in that wrought iron chair and I watched a man in a green vest drive a golf cart slowly down the cart path. The sun was warm on my arms. Maureen came out and sat down across from me. It's done. It's done. It's done. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Naomi, you understand that in approximately 20 minutes your daughter is going to find you, and it is going to be ugly. I nodded. I knew. I asked Maureen to do one more thing for me. I asked her to find Hadley, to pull her aside privately, away from her mother, and to tell her, gently, that her grandmother needed to speak with her on the terrace before the ceremony. Maureen kissed my cheek and went back inside. I sat alone for maybe 4 minutes. The terrace was empty. Most of the guests were inside being served pre-ceremony champagne. The wind moved through the tall pines at the edge of the green. I thought about Walter. I thought about how he would have handled this. Walter was a quiet man, but he had a spine of iron when it counted. He would have done exactly what I just did, and he would have taken my hand under the table afterward and said, "Good, now eat your lunch." The terrace door opened and Hadley came out. She was already in her gown. Ivory silk, simple lines, a single pearl pinned in her hair. She looked like her mother had looked at 26, except for the eyes. The eyes were her grandfather's. Steady, gray, attentive. "Grandma, Maureen said you needed me. Is everything okay?" I patted the chair next to me and she sat, gathering her dress carefully so it wouldn't drag on the stone. Sweetheart, I need to tell you some things, and I need you to listen all the way through before you say anything. Can you do that? She nodded. I told her about the back row. I watched her face as I said it, and I saw, very clearly, that she had not known. Her mouth opened slightly. Her hand went to her throat. Grandma, no. I told Mom I wanted you in the front, right next to her. I made her promise. I believe you, but here's what I want to ask you, Hadley. And I want you to be honest with me. This wedding, the 400 guests, the country club, the hydrangeas, is this what you wanted? Her eyes filled, slowly. The way a glass fills when the tap is barely on. No, Grandma. I wanted Vermont. Reed wanted Vermont. We told her over and over, and she made it happen anyway. She said you'd be heartbroken if it wasn't grand enough. She said you'd told her you wanted to give me the wedding of a lifetime. She said it would hurt you if I refused. I let that sit. I let it sit because I needed her to hear what she had just said out loud. Hadley put both hands over her mouth. Grandma, did you ever say that? Sweetheart, I told your mother I would be honored to help with whatever you and Reed wanted. I told her if you wanted Vermont, I would charter the entire bus. She started to cry. Not the pretty kind. The real kind. I let her. I sat there and I held her hand and I let my granddaughter cry on a terrace at the country club. After a minute, I told her the rest. I told her I had spent the last 20 minutes on the phone, canceling the catering, the bar, the band, the photographer, the cake, the transportation, and the back half of the floral order. I told her the ceremony space was still standing because that part was locked in. I told her the rehearsal dinner was already paid for and the bridesmaid suite was hers until checkout. She listened with her hand still on her mouth. When I finished, she did something I didn't expect. She started laughing. A small, shaky, relieved laugh. Grandma. Oh my God. Grandma. Honey, I know this is a lot. No. Grandma, you don't understand. I've been so sick about today. I have been throwing up for 3 days. Reed and I were going to elope last week. We almost did. We came this close. I squeezed her hand. Hadley, listen to me. The ceremony space is yours. The minister is here. Reed is here. Your friends are here. You can still get married today, in front of the people who actually came to see you. You can do it standing on this terrace if you want. And then you and Reed can drive up to Vermont tonight and have a real dinner with his parents at the inn down the road from their farm. And I will pay for that dinner, and that one I'll pay for with joy. She nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand, pearl earrings catching the sun. What about Mom? Sweetheart, your mother is about to have a very bad afternoon, and she has earned it. But the afternoon is hers, not yours, and not mine. You are going to go marry Reed, and your mother will deal with the consequences of her own choices. The terrace door opened. Bernadette came out like a missile. Trevor, 2 steps behind her, on his phone, his face the color of cold milk. Mother. The country club just told me they're canceling the reception. The florist just left. What in God's name did you do? I stayed seated. Hadley stayed seated. Bernie, sit down, please. I will not sit down. The guests are arriving. There is no dinner. There is no cake. The DJ just called Trevor and said his contract was rescinded. Are you out of your mind? I looked up at her. My only child, 47 years old. The little girl I had carried to her first day of kindergarten in a yellow raincoat. Bernie, you put me in the back row. She actually rolled her eyes. Mother, this is about a seat? A seat? You blew up your granddaughter's wedding over a seat? No, Bernie. I did not blow up Hadley's wedding over a seat. No, Bernie. I did not blow up Hadley's wedding. I blew up your wedding. The one you planned without her permission, the one you funded with my money, the one you used my name to justify, and the one you tried to make me sit in the back of like a stranger. That wedding is over. Hadley's wedding, the one she actually wanted, can still happen right here in the next 40 minutes if she chooses. That is up to her, not me, and certainly not you. Trevor finally lowered his phone. Naomi, let's be reasonable. We can put the catering back on. I can call the country club right now. We just need you to reauthorize the card. Trevor, I am not reauthorizing anything. If you want a 400-person dinner served in 90 minutes, you are welcome to put it on your own card. I'm told the Amex Black has no preset limit. He just looked at me. He didn't say anything. He didn't say anything because he and Bernadette both knew, the way Hadley did not know, that the hedge fund had been on shaky ground for the better part of 2 years. I knew it because I had quietly bailed out their second mortgage in 2023. $41,000, wired discreetly, never spoken of. Bernadette opened her mouth and closed it. I stood up. I smoothed my navy dress. Bernie, I love you. I have loved you since the moment the nurse put you in my arms in 1978. But I am done being the silent wallet. I am done being told it's just easier this way. I am done being moved to the back row by my own daughter. She stared at me. Mother, the guests. The guests are your problem. I suggest you go inside and decide what to tell them. The bar is open for another 20 minutes. After that, you'll need to make some phone calls. Hadley stood up next to me. She was still holding my hand. Mom. Bernadette turned to her. For the first time, she really looked at her daughter. Hadley, baby, we can fix this. We'll figure it out. Don't worry. Mom, I'm getting married on this terrace in 45 minutes. Reed and I. The minister and Grandma and Maureen and Reed's parents and whichever of our actual friends want to stand here with us. The rest of the guests can have drinks at the bar and then go home. There's no reception. There's no 400 people. There's just us. Bernadette went very pale. Hadley, the Times piece. Vanity Fair was sending a photographer. Your father's clients are here. Honey, no. Hadley let go of my hand. She walked over to her mother. She was a head shorter than Bernadette, but in that moment she looked older. Mom, the Times piece is for you. Vanity Fair is for you. Dad's clients are for Dad. None of this was ever for me. I love you. I will always love you. But today, I'm marrying Reed the way I wanted to in the first place. And after today, Reed and I are going to need to think very carefully about how often you and Dad are in our lives. Bernadette opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Trevor put his hand on her arm. He tried to steer her back toward the lobby. She didn't move. She just stood there on that stone terrace, the breeze pulling at the hem of her champagne dress. And for the first time in my life, I watched my daughter realize that the world she lived in had been propped up by things she had refused to see. Hadley turned back to me. Grandma, will you walk me down the aisle? Reed's mom is here, his dad too, but I want you. I want you next to me when I take Reed's hand. I couldn't speak for a second. I just nodded. Maureen and Reed's parents came out onto the terrace a few minutes later. Reed came up from the men's locker room in his suit, looking confused and then relieved when Hadley explained. The minister, a kind woman in her 50s named Reverend Tully, listened to the new plan with a slow, understanding nod, the way only a small-town minister can do. We held the ceremony on the terrace. There were 11 of us, counting the bride and groom. The string quartet had been canceled, so we had no music. One of Reed's college friends had brought a guitar in his trunk for the after-party. He sat on the stone wall and played a soft, finger-picked version of an old folk song while Hadley walked toward Reed, holding my arm, both of us in our slightly impractical shoes on the uneven flagstones. I gave her away in the morning sunlight on a country club terrace, surrounded by the people who actually loved her. Inside, I'm told, 400 guests were milling around the lobby, drinking the last of the open bar champagne, while Bernadette and Trevor tried to explain that the reception had been canceled due to a, quote, family emergency. Most people figured it out pretty quickly. By the time we were saying our vows on the terrace, half the guests had already gotten in their cars and left. Reed kissed Hadley. We all clapped. Reed's mother cried. Reed's father shook my hand and then, on second thought, hugged me. Maureen took photos with her phone. Reverend Tully said she'd email me the marriage certificate paperwork. Hadley and Reed drove to Vermont that afternoon. They stopped at a roadside diner outside Brattleboro for cheeseburgers. Hadley sent me a photo of her ivory gown and Reed's tuxedo squeezed into a red vinyl booth, the two of them grinning, a chocolate milkshake between them. The caption said, "Best wedding ever. Love you, Grandma." I taped that photo to my refrigerator. It's still there. I didn't see Bernadette for almost 3 months. She called me eventually. Late on a Tuesday night in October, she had been crying. "Mom." I don't know what to say. I sat down at my kitchen table. The tea kettle was just starting to whistle. "Bernie, you can start with the truth about the wedding. You can start with the truth about the wedding, about the condo, about the lake house, about all of it. And then we can talk about whether we know how to be mother and daughter from here, because I'm not going back to the way it was." There was a long silence on the line. And then, slowly, she started telling me the truth. Not all of it, not that night, but the beginning of it. The mortgage, the credit cards, the fact that Trevor's fund had been hemorrhaging for years, the fact that the lifestyle had never quite matched the reality, the fact that she had been terrified for a long time and had decided that the only solution was to keep me convinced that everything was fine and that helping was the natural order of things. I listened. I made my tea. I told her I was glad she had called. I told her I loved her. I told her that I was not the bank, and I was not going to be the bank again, and that if she and Trevor needed to sell the lake house should be sold, and that the world would not end. I told her she could come for Thanksgiving, but only if she came as my daughter, and not as the woman who had put me in the back row. She came. She didn't bring Trevor. She helped me peel potatoes at the kitchen counter, and she cried over the gravy, and she didn't ask me for a single thing. It's a start. People talk about standing up for yourself like it's some grand declaration, some moment of fireworks. In my experience, it isn't. In my experience, it's a 68-year-old woman sitting on a velvet bench in a country club bathroom, making 7 phone calls with her hands shaking the whole time. It's a quiet decision that the back row is not where she belongs, and a willingness to spend a fortune to prove it. I don't regret a single canceled check. I don't regret a single phone call. I regret only the years I spent believing that love and silence were the same thing. What about you? Have you ever had a moment where someone in your family asked you to make yourself smaller and you finally said no? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story meant something to you, please give it a like and consider subscribing. There's another story coming next week, and I think you'll want to hear it. I think about that morning on the terrace more often than I expected I would. Not the phone calls, not the cancellations, not even the look on my daughter's face when she realized what had happened. What stays with me is the velvet bench in that powder room, and the woman I was for those 4 minutes before I picked up the phone. She was tired, she was 68, and she was finally, after years of pretending otherwise, done. I want to be honest with you about something. The decision I made that day did not feel brave in the moment. It felt like falling. It felt like letting go of a rope I had been gripping for so long my hands had forgotten how to open. The bravery, if there was any, came in the willingness to let things break, to let the catering fall apart, to let 400 guests leave confused, to let my daughter face a room of her tennis friends with no explanation. I had spent 30 years smoothing things over for Bernadette. The hardest thing I ever did was let her have a bad afternoon. There is a law in human relationships, and I think most of us learn it too late. What you tolerate, you teach. Every time I wrote a check without asking a question, I taught Bernadette that my silence was endless. Every time I accepted a lie as a kindness, I taught her that the truth was negotiable. The wedding did not come out of nowhere. The back row did not come out of nowhere. I planted that seed. I watered it. I was as much a part of the cause as she was, and that is the part I had to sit with on the drive home. But causes can change. That is the other half of the law. The moment I made those 7 phone calls, I planted something different, a consequence Bernadette had never seen before. And from that single morning, the whole shape of our family began to bend in a new direction. Hadley got the wedding she actually wanted. Reed's parents got to be part of it. And Bernadette, 3 months later, called me on a Tuesday night and started telling the truth for the first time in years. None of that would have happened if I had taken seat 38B of my own life. If I could leave you with anything, it would be this. Kindness is not the same thing as compliance. A good heart is not required to bankroll its own diminishment. The wisdom to see clearly, the strength to act on what you see, and the integrity to do it without raising your voice, those three things will serve you in any room, at any age, against anyone who has grown comfortable underestimating you. I am not a religious woman, but I do believe in this. Every person gets a handful of moments in a lifetime where the road forks, and one path is the path of being smaller, and the other is the path of being honest. Most of those moments arrive disguised as something trivial, a seat assignment, a polite request, and it's just easier this way. Pay attention to those moments. They are not small. They are the whole thing.